Okay, I had some time to reflect on this. Um, Now that I remember, I'm going to send in some preliminary thinning flakes for the notching. See, it's good to take a break because you can remember stuff like that, at least with me. Since I am quote unquote on the spectrum, I forget extremely obvious things or I miss it. It's very obvious things. Everybody hates it, but with me, I can look straight at something and not see it. Or I can be doing something and totally miss something very obvious. What's my workaround for that? I do have workarounds for many things. When you're on the spectrum, you learn to have workarounds. You double check yourself. Right? My workaround for missing something is take a break or just not worry about it. I know that's not much of a workaround. The pausing is the best situation. Stand back, take a little bit, back off a little bit, take a little bit of a overall view, and sometimes it'll pop into the brain. That's what I did with this. Okay, so I need to thin, do some preliminary thinning, or it'll be a problem later, and preliminary thinning for the notching. Now the stems are wide on these. It's best to just thin the whole thing in general, right? But one of the rules, so-called, one of my rules anyway, is to knap with the fewest flakes possible. So instead of sending in a lot of parallel flakes here to thin the whole thing evenly, I'm just going to strategically try to thin areas that I know are going to be troublesome later if I don't thin them, and leave the rest kind of lumpy because it don't matter. Because it's hard to get perfect flakes every time, right? So if you don't have to get a perfect flake somewhere, just take a relatively short flake. You don't have to run the whole ridge. Like, there's a whole ridge here. I could have run that whole ridge, but I don't really need to in the middle here. I'm not going to notch that part. I'm going to notch these areas. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? So if I don't have to take a long flake, if I don't have to set up that platform for a perfect long flake, I'm not going to. Saves time, saves aggravation, but it's one of those things that requires lots of practice, unfortunately. In the beginning, you're going to go, I can't do it. You know, I can't be that strategic. I have a hard enough time trying to figure out what a flake is. I mean, what am I supposed to do here? Is it supposed to be pressure or percussion? Does it matter? It looks like pressure on artifacts. Is it pressure? Is it percussion? Some sort of weird thing with maybe a lever jig to do some of the flakes. The answer to all of that is yes. You mean there were levers used on some of these points? Well, according to eyewitness accounts, yes. I read one account where the European guy was looking at the Indian making something, and he said he put the point within a hollowed out spot in a tree to brace it and used a long pole thing to lever a flake off, as an example. And I'm paraphrasing. One of these days I'll get good enough at Spanish so that I can translate directly from the Spanish what the explorers witnessed. That's some of the best accounts as far as contemporary with the actual production of these stone points. I'm not really saying it's the best in the description, because you think that they made up stuff, or you think they might make up stuff now in social media. Well, the stories used to tell back then make our social media kind of tame. But anyway, you can't take all of those stories literally from the explorers, but you can gain some insight by trying to put two and two together with our modern experience and some of the descriptions. And the verbs they used. Sometimes you can tell what the Indians were kind of doing by the verbs that were used to describe what they were doing. Like in most of the accounts that I've read, it seems like the Indians were hitting. In Spanish, different words that mean hitting or pounding or striking are used instead of pushing or levering. It's all hitting. Almost all of the techniques were hitting techniques. So that means direct percussion or indirect percussion, or both. Percussion. Even on the small arrowheads, percussion. Okay. Now, did I thin out these areas? No, I'm not done yet. What I did was I regularized it, because it's best to have this regular, the old technique, the old rule. Make sure you don't have extra mass if you're hitting really hard on the base. Make sure you don't have extra mass at the tip. So that's what I was doing. I was just going around regularizing it, because that's the regular procedure. Now, let's see. I'm going to send in some notches there. So let me send in a preliminary thinning flake. Let's see. I'm a little bit wide, I think. I'm trying to imagine where these notches are going to go. Okay, that's the preform. Some people ask me, what's the difference between the preform and the biface? The preform is specific to the type of point. So specific to a Snyders, I want to make this as close as I can to the outline of a Snyders without being too big or too small, obviously, but also keeping in mind that in the future there's going to be a notch here and a notch here, exactly where I can draw it in, but normally I would have a Snyders point that I can overlay. I don't have a Snyders point to overlay, so I'm just going to eyeball it. Just stubborn, man. You don't want to do the drawing. You're just stubborn. Stupid. Yep. I don't want to end up with a little bit of ink on the point either. You know, there's a possibility I could end up with a little bit of ink on the point. That would drive me up the wall. I would have to get my acetone out and try to get rid of it. I'm rubbing on it, trying to get rid of the ink with the acetone, and then having it leach into the stone and permanently set. And then what? This lump, it bugs me. Could I have sent in a better flake? Not really, because it wasn't convex enough. Now, am I going to be able to do it? I might be able to do it, but I'm going to have to lose some of that edge. I need to get rid of that lump. It's a good exercise. Good training exercise. It's part of developing the preform. Regularize the edge before any major modification stage. Like if you're going to do a final pass or a major lump removal or a turtleback removal or something that requires some edge preparation, regularize it. Regularize the edge so you know what you have, so you can see what's going on. See, I got to remove some of this down here first, and then I can tackle that. Since I'm going to lose that edge anyway, a little bit, maybe 1/8 of an inch off. Thin it here first. I'm going to strike some flakes off in that direction, and then that'll move the edge that way, and then I'll try to strike that off. And if it doesn't work, I'm just going to leave it steppy. All right. One of the important things to remember is you got to have a clean point, clean bit, clean tip, no rock chips. Having rock chips in the bit will mess you up many times, and you won't know what's going on. You'll have no idea that was it. Okay. Stupid steppy stuff. Stupid steppy stuff. All right. I can't do much about it. Maybe I'll be able to hit that a second time. Now let's try it. Damage control. Timeout for damage control. I'm going to send a flake in this way. It's risky. Did I do it? No, not too bad. No, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Okay. But the terminations, man, they're killing me. Killing me. Let's tackle the big bump so we can get this thing done with. I prefer continuous platforms instead of isolated ones, right? So this, I have very I have a lot of options along the edge here to attack that. That's what I prefer, instead of isolating one spot, and then if I don't do that one spot properly, I'm lost. I don't want to be lost, so I have continuous as much as possible, so I have different areas that I can strike, just in case. Yeah, just in case something like that happens. I did not do that on purpose because I hate those. I bit off more than I could chew on that one. This one might not work either. Yeah, good training exercise. Show you how not to do it. Trying to do too much with a thin edge. Take back the edge again. Try not to think about it too much. I've done this thousands of times on more difficult material successfully. If I'm not doing it successfully on this, that means I'm thinking too much. All right. Thinking way too much. Okay, I'm going to upload these two first videos. I'm probably going to have to finish this up on the next segment. So I'll upload these first two videos. Give the camera a little break. It's starting to overheat a little bit. And then come back to this. It's a little bit narrow for a Snyders, but I'm still going to go for it because I can do the notching. Show you how the Snyders notches look. It's thin enough now. I just had to tackle that step fracture in the middle, although it doesn't look all that great. I just slammed into it very aggressively. That was the only way to get rid of it. A different consistency in the darker material, I think. I think that's what it was. There's no reason for it to be that steppy. So I think that's what it might be. No other reason other than it flakes differently than the surrounding material. Okay? Alrighty.